Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Female Athlete powered by Coach Peri. My name is Hayley Nixon, and we will be chatting about menopause, both peri and post-menopause, and everything related to the phases with Shona Hendricks. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel below and make sure you get notifications on when our next video comes out. Enjoy the chat today. Hey, Shones, good to be back again. And look, today I think a really important conversation. We're going to be chatting a little bit and all things around menopause and certain phases. And sure, I think as athletes in our early to mid 30s, maybe we think this is something that we're not dealing with yet. But as coaches, we're certainly dealing with it on a daily basis because of a lot of our athletes fit into those phases. But more importantly is it seems that there's research starting to show that being proactive as a younger athlete is actually better for you than waiting for menopause to hit and then trying to deal with the symptoms or with the effects. So good for young and older to be listening to this conversation today.
Yeah, exactly. I'm grateful for the compliment that we are, you say we're not quite there yet, but exactly that. So maybe just as a definition to start, we speak around menopause, right? But menopause is essentially the one point in time where you haven't had your period for 12 months. It's a single point in time. Perimenopause is then the 5 to 8 years leading up to that one point in time, and postmenopause obviously post that one point in time. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, there's so much that we can do in the perimenopause phase to almost have the bad side effects of menopause almost, just not as bad later on in life. And so, and then again, in menopause, it's not saying once you post menopause that you're long gone and forgotten. That's that there are still things that you can do in that phase. And I just maybe also just want to add there, it's I think the way menopause is represented in society and in the media, it's made to be the thing that you're old. I mean, I even just made a joke about not being old thanks to menopause. And so I think women are nervous about reading more about it or they're apprehensive about it because they don't want to be perceived as old or, not strong anymore. And yes, there are certain physiological changes that take place, but if we can debunk some of those myths, I mean, I read an interesting thing that not even 100 years ago, they said that during menopause, women were regarded as psychotic, and I think that's the extreme of where we've come from. But yes, there are mood changes because of the reduction of estrogen and the flatlining of other hormones. So again, just demystifying it a little bit and then really empowering women with the things that they can do to make this change of life that much easier or less sort of traumatic and stressful.
Yeah, sure. And it relates a lot to us trying to debunk menstrual cycle and young athletes being nervous to talk about it. So now we're trying to say to the sort of older athletes, let's not be nervous or embarrassed or ashamed to talk about menopause, like whether it's hot flushes or it's mood swings, so what? If we know it and we expect it and we understand why we're getting it, that it's not psychotic behavior, it's hormonal. And then we can empower these athletes to cope better with it, to understand it, and maybe to plan their training better around it. So coming to training and obviously us dealing with female athletes, what are we looking to do, if I can ask that in a broad spectrum, in relation to menopause or to not do?
Yeah, so I think the important thing to note that is during perimenopause, so in that phase before menopause itself, your hormones are, if I use it quite flippantly, quite all over the place. Normally with a younger female, the cycles are quite regular, but what we're seeing in that perimenopause phase is the progesterone and estrogen is quite erratic. And so, we've spoken around the importance of tracking your cycle as an athlete, but it's a little bit impossible to do at that time. And so one of the important things that we need to consider is, while that is quite erratic, what ends up happening then after menopause is those hormones flatline. And that will then have an effect on the thermoregulation, which is why we get the hot flashes, the mood swings, because with the estrogen sort of dropping down, that does have an effect on the serotonin and dopamine levels within the brain. And physiologically, that is an actual reason. So it's no longer just like to make a joke around the psychotic episode, but there's physiological reason for that. And so if we can start adapting some of our training and nutritional aspects, you can't forego those physiological effects, but you can almost dissipate them slightly or minimize them slightly, or so that you're not having such a greater effect. So we can do things within training and nutritional aspects that can that can help with that. And particularly if done in that perimenopause phase, making some of those changes, it really can make those side effects a little bit less as you move along.
Yeah, sure. So then relating to training, are there certain things that we can be doing more of or less of? Do we find ourselves coming back sort of full cycle to bone density issues? Or I know we talk about with that change in estrogen levels, the possibility of gaining weight more easily. So what are we looking to try and adapt or to change?
So particularly from a training point of view, yeah, exactly. You mentioned, about the weight issues, and I guess what everyone lands up doing then is they land up doing long, slow endurance sort of stuff, and then probably cutting some carbs and things, and those are probably the two things that would have the worst effect, because your body will then just we mentioned in one of our other previous videos, the cutting of carbohydrates will reduce the estrogen even more. And if your estrogen is already flatlining, there'll be an increase in cortisol levels and a greater weight gain. And so a lot of the sort of movements at the moment is towards saying that a little bit more high intensity interval type training, but more, high intensity kind of work, so sprints sort of effects, that is having, it will elicit a similar sort of physiological effect, and therefore won't have that hormone flatlining. I mean, and as I'm saying this, I'm getting a little bit nervous, because the sports scientist in me is wanting to say that these things are really, really great forms of exercise for sure. However, they do obviously come with an inherent risk of injury, and one must ensure that one does a good block of strength training beforehand, before jumping into any kind of plyometric or high intensity work. So, again, just making sure that you seek out the right kind of professionals to guide you in this process. Don't suddenly just start doing a couple of box jumps and sprints without having that kind of base of training. And again, we're talking strength training. Yes, that's vital, and building strength is so important. But a lot of what's coming up for the perimenopause and postmenopausal woman is really having the resistance training effect. So lifting heavy, but again, not just going in and starting a 1RM squat, but building up to that point. But there's a lot to say that's really using those weights and that sort of training it will have a very positive effect on your physiology and your bone density. But again, with a little asterisk saying if done responsibly and with the right scientific principles.
And I think so much of this, maybe on the emotional side, is like people and women specifically, and coaches, with its male coaches, we don't talk about it enough. We don't know enough about it. So when something like this strikes, the supposed bad effects of menopause or postmenopause, then women get shy and they back off, instead of possibly just consulting with either a nutrition specialist or a personal trainer or a coach to just get guidelines. Because the first thing first is just to say, okay, I'm actually okay, this is not an abnormal, and then secondly, this is the way to proactively train around it or train with it. So I think just the more we have these sorts of conversations of saying, like, every individual is different, and we are still trying to work out what the best ways are, but this is what's coming through in the research, this is what's coming through as anecdotally working, from subjective opinions, and then trying to apply that to the athletes so that they're not just stuck in a dark room kicking themselves for having these hormonal things happening to them that they can't control.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such a pertinent point. There's so much misinformation out there. So I think having some sort of critical thinking and looking at the source of that information, who it's coming from, making sure that it's backed and reliable sources is key. And, having these conversations first and foremost, yes, is absolutely vital. Not shying away from it, saying what you experience. I mean, I've had conversations with some athletes now who are looking back and saying, okay, well, 10 years ago, clearly I was having these issues and landed up with stress fractures, but, it was probably due to low energy availability in that time, and not, and all these changes within the hormones would then have had even a worse effects on the bone density and, bone mineral density, etc. And so, yeah, definitely having these conversations, speaking to the right people, finding the right sort of reliable sources of information is really key. And yeah, again, just dropping the tabooness of it. Let's have these conversations. Let's speak openly around what we're experiencing and how it's affecting training and life and and all the rest.
Yeah, sure. And I think, like we touched on at the beginning in the opening, and we're seeing it come through more and more, is that it's not just a case of waiting until it happens. you and I discussed before from a previous seminar, that there's a lot you can do as a young athlete to try and lessen the effects of things like menopause later on in your life. Unfortunately, we can't always just take a pill when it does hit and then expect everything to be better. If we've already done years and years of damage, we're in a deeper hole when it actually kicks in. So yeah, I think also, to the young athletes that are listening, there's a lot we can do now in terms of trying to dull those effects later. And then, of course, as you said, just to be empowered with the knowledge of when it comes, just to reach out and kind of proactively behave around it.
Yeah, exactly. Don't see the title as menopause and flick past it. It's an important concept. Even exactly get the habits and the training and the nutritional aspects done right now, so that you don't have such a bad effects later on. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, Shona. Always good to catch up with you. And I'm sure, like we said before, this will probably come up again and we'll revisit it. But thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge on this.
Yeah, thank you, Hels. Looking forward to many more of these chats.
Thank you so much for joining us today as we discussed a very important conversation, and that is menopause. Equally important for young athletes and older athletes to empower themselves with that knowledge. So thank you, Shona Hendricks, for your time. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel. And also, if you'd like to watch our hour-long, more extensive video where we covered a lot of these subjects with a 4-panel party, then please go ahead and find that under our video section. We'll see you next time. Bye.